The first thing I want to do is say that tomorrow at 5:30, a demonstration organised by anti-war groups and Palestine solidarity groups, groups like Mothers Against Genocide, the anti-war movement, Union of Students in Ireland, Irish Palestine Solidarity and many others will be assembling at the European Commission offices on Mount Street, and then they will march here, calling once again on the government to take the opportunity to do what they should have done when they were first asked in November to discharge their responsibilities under the Genocide Convention to act to prevent genocide. And no matter how much the government attempts to obfuscate around the complex legal character of joining the case versus intervening in the case, that's all nonsense. Okay? It's nonsense. What the convention was drawn up for was to prevent genocide, to stop genocides. And all signatories to the Genocide Convention are required, as soon as they are put on notice that a genocide may be underway, to act and to do everything in their power to prevent the commission of genocide. That's what the signatories are required to do. What has Ireland done to prevent the commission of genocide, to deter Israel from continuing what the World Court has now said is a prima facie case of genocide against Israel for the massacre they have conducted in Israel, in Gaza, in front of the eyes of the world? And where the court made very, very clear that Israel has committed some of the acts alleged, their job is to then look at the evidence and say, does it constitute genocide? But they've accepted it might. And once it is possible, and they have put countries on note that a genocide is possibly taking place, because they're not in a position to make a final adjudication, but we can all look at it and say it's obvious, it fits the definitions of genocide. When you look at the barbaric incitement of Israeli ministers, the Israeli Prime Minister, Israeli generals, Israeli officials saying we're going to burn Gaza, calling Palestinians animals, calling them Amalek, cutting off food, water and electricity, bombing schools, bombing hospitals, bombing water infrastructure, assassinating people in the street carrying white flags, telling people to move en masse, which is ethnic cleansing, to safe areas and then bombing the safe areas. And it just goes on. And what does the world do? Nothing. And it's very important to say, by the way, and this will relate to the issue about going to Washington and so on, once you have been put on notice that a genocide may take place, if you assist in acts that may then be genocide, subsequently you're complicit with those acts. So other people, and in my opinion, they should be absolutely in the frame, and indeed it might be a case we should be taking, is about the complicity of the United States, the complicity of Britain, the complicity of states that are continuing to arm Israel, sending them the missiles to rain down death and destruction on men, women and children. In the case of Biden boosting the $3 billion annual subsidy they give to Israel, mostly for weapons, mostly to kill Palestinians, they boost it to $14 billion when Israel says they're going to attack Gaza. They're complicit, and they should be in The Hague as well for war crimes. Are we seriously going to go over and shake hands with somebody who is proactively, enthusiastically arming a state that is now in the dock for genocide, and a genocide we can see in front of our eyes? Are we seriously going to glad hand them on our National Day? Or are we going to make a point, and I say that to the government, I say it to all members of the government, and I say it to our colleagues in Sinn Féin and anybody else who's considering it. What Bernadette McAliskey did when she was given the freedom of New York City, she went over to America, all right, and she gave the key to the city to the Black Panthers. because it was during the civil rights movement. She stood with the oppressed, who were being beaten down by the American government at the time. That's the tradition we should be standing in, standing with the oppressed. And you see, the big problem with all of this is none of this would have happened. October the 7th, all the rest of it would not have happened if the international community had not given impunity to Israel for decades of apartheid, of occupation, of a 16-year-long siege, the criminal siege of Gaza, which in and of itself is a crime against humanity, the collective punishment, long before October the 7th. What's happening tonight as we speak? Israeli commandos going into a hospital and assassinating people in their beds, including somebody who was paralysed. These people are deranged, and they have been given the licence to carry out this horror against the Palestinian people for decades by the United States, by Europe and every other state that treated them as a normal state instead of doing what was finally done to apartheid South Africa. And I'll finish with this. I spoke on a platform at the weekend in London at a Stop the War Coalition event with Andrew Feinstein, former MP for the ANC, of a Jewish background, 39 members of his family slaughtered in Auschwitz. And he stood up at the rally and he said, the proudest moment I've ever had as a South African was seeing my government put Israel on trial for genocide. He's of a Jewish background. He said, that state doesn't represent me. I stand with the Palestinians in the resistance against this brutal state. Now, I am ashamed that our government isn't standing shoulder to shoulder with South Africa in doing that. We could be proud if you had done that. But you failed to do it, you poured cold water on their case, and even now you're procrastinating instead of doing the right thing and standing with an oppressed people who are being mown down by a genocidal regime.